Yay. Good evening and welcome back to Real Adult Wisdom. I'm your host, Becky Schaefer, and tonight we're continuing the Rise and Rewrite series with someone, of course, that I still deeply admire. I still admire you.
Oh, thank you.
I'm just messing. We were talking a little bit before the show. Like, it's been a whole week. I missed you.
Yeah. I was definitely looking forward to coming back to it's kind of like our little circle here with you and I and the audience. So I was definitely looking forward to it.
It is. And
Yeah.
tonight we are going to dive into identity shattering as initiation. And that's
Yes.
a lot. That's a big word. Big three words, actually.
Yep.
And I don't think we talk enough about what happens when the identity you've built your life on begins to fall apart. So I'm just going to dive right in, but I do want to welcome everybody to Real Adult Wisdom. And this is our second show of, we said four series, but who knows? We may end up going more because we just have, there's just so much to talk about that I
Yes.
just can't get bored with any of it, actually. Um, but as we are talking about the identity that you built, that I've built, that our listeners have built on our life, and it begins to fall apart, either due to a burnout, betrayal, sometimes an illness, divorce, a career ending, a career change, a spiritual awakening, or simply the quiet realization that the life that you're living no longer fits the truth inside of you. And most people see this moment as a crisis or a failure or a collapse, or we're not doing AKA what we have been programmed to do. Um,
hmm
but I think we're going to offer a different perspective on that tonight.
Yes.
Yeah, for sure. So identity shattering is often an initiation. Um, when the other person begins to crumble, the version of you that performed, achieved, pleased, um, endured, or kept it all together, it isn't punishment. It is a soul invitation. I'm going to let you talk a little bit about the soul invitation of this.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. So, first of all, I think that you and I can safely coin the term ISI, Identity Shattering Initiation. ISI. I like that. What does this mean and on the soul level? Um I we touched on this a little bit before in the last episode. I think for me, my soul cries out to me through emotions, mainly as anxiety and depression. So that was kind of what I've noticed as a pattern throughout my shattering moments, because I've had quite a few actually. And I just want to let people in the audience know that this can be a process that you go through in your life, and you can have a few moments that continue to keep bringing you back to yourself layer by layer. People talk about having one awakening. I kind of giggle at that because I feel like I've awakened in a series of myself, and it kind of just keeps going like a spiral, right? But at the soul level, we talked about when we start experiencing this kind of inner turmoil where it's just the day to day, you're acting, you're going through the motions, but it's just always there. And it's kind of like this voice that is just like, "Ugh," you feel the drag, you feel the pullback, you feel like you're not really going headfirst into your life and really excited about it and having all of the joy that comes behind it. And so at a certain point, it's really your soul crying out to you. So, like you said, it's not a crisis. It's your soul calling out to you to try to bring you back and have you remember who you are. Remember who you are. I compare it lots of times to a toddler who's having a tantrum. Sometimes our soul just has a tantrum because it's so overwhelmed, and its systems don't know how to express what it needs. So you go through what you feel like is a crisis, or you feel like is a shattering with a negative end, instead of something that can actually rebuild you. And again, that shows up in a lot of mental illnesses, depression, anxiety, and it shows up in erratic behavior, maybe unsafe behaviors, high risk behaviors, with money or yourself or your own relationships or things like that. So I think it's important to really take stock of what's happening in your life, and instead of looking at them like, oh, this is just a huge crisis, this is leading to something bad, it is an initiation and an invitation from your soul to come back into alignment. And I think if we all started to think more of it this way, we can have a lot more compassion for ourselves.
Yeah, because in a level, this is when we lose the identity that we were praised for, the roles that
Yeah.
lived inside us, or the mask that once kept us safe, uh, which remains really raw at times, or the
Mhm.
real you before the world told you who to be. So, definitely, this is definitely a terrifying, can sometimes be a very lonely experience.
Yes,
But the soul recognizes that it's coming home. It can feel it, like your body can. It's almost like a somatic experience as well.
it is. It
Yeah.
is. Yeah,
So,
definitely.
like, this is the moment too. Of course, I got to throw this in there. I have to throw in the why not me because it just
Of course.
all in there. So, this is the moment where the why not me concept literally was born, like in my
Mhm.
own story. Like the moment I stopped trying to hold it together, this life that required me to basically abandon myself, when everything I once identified was cracked. I was left with a simple question like, if not this version of me, then who am I allowed to become? And I think there's a lot of listeners sometimes right now too, especially like people going through a midlife crisis, as in menopause, um, empty nester, divorce. It's like we have to have this type of initiation of this identity. Um, it's a huge awakening. I know it was a huge awakening for me. During this time, I was becoming an empty nester. I moved to a new state, started a new job with the school district, and man, did I struggle. And
Yeah.
eventually that evolved basically into, why not me to choose differently? Why not me to start over? Why not me to become someone I actually finally can recognize? Um,
Wow.
and
Yes.
I know in your book, The Sacred Undoing,
Mhm.
is literally also built around this idea of identity unraveling as a pathway to truth as well. So, can you? I'm going to have you talk a moment. I'm going to have you. Can you talk like a moment in your life where everything you were building onto fell apart and how that breakdown became your initiation? Because I think part of that went into your book.
Yes. And I want the essence of it went into my book. I didn't really go into detail about it because I didn't want it to be so much a memoir, more so like a
Mhm.
manual for this book around.
Yes.
There's more books coming for sure, by the way. I know you've mentioned that for yourself too. But I would say that the very first initiation for me was the ending of my first marriage. I was married for 7 years from the time I was 19 all the way to 26. We met here in Houston, and shortly after we were married, moved out to California where he was from. Uh, and I'll say we gave it our best shot with the tools that we had, you know?
Yes.
But it just wasn't working and it wasn't healthy. And we were trying to reach out as best we could to resources to help us, the church. We tried marriage counseling, but that kind of stuff only works if you're telling the truth.
Right.
If you go in and you're continuing the lies or you're pre-gaming of what we're going to say to the therapist, I look back on it now thinking this total thing was a manipulation and spiritual bypassing of myself. But just to hold it all together, just to try to again keep the performance going, there's such a fear for some of us of admitting that we're human, like you've mentioned before,
Mm-hmm.
that we can make mistakes or that we're struggling or that we failed in some way. Uh, and I've learned how to look at failure as my initiation along with trauma. For me, uh, trauma in my life has actually played a big role in my initiations too. And
Yes.
so at the end of that marriage, just to give a snapshot, I was kicked out of my house. The locks were changed on the door that day when I was at work. And this was a home that had all of my things in it, that I had painted the walls with my first husband. I had decorated it and made it my home. And it was denied to me. And I was told to leave and handed a business card for a lawyer that I can contact if I had questions. So
Mm-hmm.
then I had to pack a suitcase as I was instructed with my things, walk out of the door, get into my car, and realize that I was utterly alone. And the people who I had thought of um, as family for 7 years were no longer my family, were no longer a safe place for me. And it makes me emotional because it was real pain. It was really, really painful. Um, and not really even understanding why. I wasn't given the gift of closure. So that's another thing. A huge initiation in this trauma was for me to accept apologies I've never gotten and will never receive, but I've had to forgive somehow. And so what I did was is then in that moment sitting in my little Honda coupe with my suitcase from one moment to the next, ask myself, who am I now? Who am I going to be now? I don't know who I am without this identity, and it is fucking terrifying.
And you started
Thankfully,
at
I
19, so that's a
yeah,
little different than getting married like in your late 20s. You're like a baby still.
right, right. And you know, I could have used a more couple of years to figure out what it was that I really wanted and what was good for me. But I made my decisions and it led me down this path. But it's a sacred path of suffering. Suffering brings us closer to God. And in that time, I had to really lean on my faith because I had nothing else except for a good friend from work who I called, told her what happened. She kind of knew what we were going through leading up to this. And she told me to come. And I stayed at her house. I had a room at her house for quite a while I was going through all of this. And I simply did not know what to do with myself. And I was not opening up to my family about it either because I tried to keep up this whole show. And so, uh, what it led me to do was to really turn inward. And so I started seeing the therapist, referred me to an independent counselor, started going to therapy. Therapy is a great thing. I give it credit, but I was going like 3 times a week for about the first 3 months. And I had started a daily yoga practice earlier in the year on January 1st of 2014, actually. So it's been a little over 10 years now. And that really changed my life. Some of the great gurus have said, be careful if you pick up yoga practice every day because it will change your life. And it did, because after 8 months in August is when everything started to come apart. Because I was also setting up boundaries that my partner wasn't used to. I was saying no finally to things. I wanted to see the same balance that I was achieving and the same strength that I was achieving on the mat, off of the mat, and in my life. And so this was a big part of my healing through that first initiation, I guess I'll call it. I did yoga 2 times a day. I lost so much weight also, but because and I felt like I was dying. I felt like I was dying. Now that's significant now that I look back on it because I was. The person that I was
Mm-hmm.
died. And so I had to mourn her and grieve her and figure out who the fuck I was going to be moving forward without this identity that I had convinced myself I was going to have for life. Um, and so in the worst times of this recovery period, I'll call it, after this separation and divorce, I had to do everything I could not to kill myself.
Mm.
And that's true. That's true. And it makes me emotional now because I know what a beautiful person I am and everything that I have been able to achieve from that time up until now. And it pains me because I think a lot of people who do decide to go through with that, I think about God, but what could they have done if they had just made it through?
Well, we're in a place where the world doesn't teach us how to handle any type of transitions. You know, it teaches us how to perform through them and how to put up this fake, you know, personality or this, but not to actually handle the transitions. You know, I went through a very
Right.
similar transition and I just felt like I was in this big black hole and all alone. And that's obviously where I realized that part of that initiation of that part of my life was to also deal with the past trauma that I had not dealt with yet. Now, I was older than you when I was going through this.
Mhm.
You were still just a baby. So you definitely had not been taught how to go through those transitions. So you were doing the best you could at the time. And I'm proud of you for getting through that because look at you today, an author,
Thank
a
you.
mom, a wife again. Um,
Yes.
and everything is now at a different level because you gained those tools.
Yes, yes. But in true fashion, that is mine. I learned things the hard way.
Hmm. Oh, don't we all
So
though?
yeah, it's kind of like go hard or go home.
Yes, I think we
Yeah.
all do, and I think part of this podcast is to throw out some tools. So you know me, I'm really big with my toolbox.
Yes, yes.
I can't help it because
Definitely.
I didn't have those tools. You know, growing
Yeah.
up, going through what I went through. You know, I was in a relationship where we were engaged. We blended our four kids together, and that fell apart in a way that I never planned on. And I definitely didn't have the tools at that time to get through that. But in hindsight, I realized that it was two people bringing their trauma together, which caused anything but a healthy relationship.
Yeah.
But what
Yeah.
I got out of that relationship was a lot of lessons. And it wasn't that we didn't love each other or care about each other. We just weren't able to give at that level that was healthy. And, I had to live with the guilt that unfortunately my kids saw that. But my kids also saw me remove myself from it and bounce back and do
Yes.
the healing I needed to do. And that's where, of course, the Dear Child letter came about. But
Right.
I think like one tool, I'm going to talk about a couple tools today. Um,
Yes.
but it's called the identity debris. Okay, like the debris, like the identity debris. Like we have all this shit laying everywhere, right? That's so
Mhm.
I name
Mhm.
my tools. So the identity debris exercise. So I want to invite you and the listeners to complete these three prompts. So I'm going to put three prompts on here. Sorry, my teacherness comes out of me sometimes. Um,
I love it. Yeah.
but one
This is what we need. Teach us. Yes.
but one thing, you know, the identity I'm afraid to lose is what? Like, what identity are you afraid to lose? Because it's been protected or defined, or it defined you. Like, what
Mhm.
identity
Mhm.
are you afraid to lose when you're trying to go through this initiation? Because honestly, you may not have really identified yourself yet. You're still trying to figure that out. So, my challenge is like the identity I'm afraid to lose. That's number one. Number two,
Mhm.
feels like it's crumbling right now. like it's the truth that you're avoiding, right? So what feels
Mm,
like
mm-hmm.
crumbling right now, but yet you can't talk about it, or you try to have a blind eye to it because it's something you're trying to avoid. And my third one, and I'm going to tell everyone to go back to about 20 minutes because that's where these questions are being asked. If
Yes.
I wasn't trying to be who I've always been, I would allow myself to become someone who, like, who would you allow yourself to become? So, again, I'm going to,
Right.
three questions I have in this called identity debris. Okay. The identity I'm afraid to lose. What are you afraid to lose? Okay. And who's giving you that identity? What feels like it's crumbling in your life right now?
Mm-hmm.
And if I wasn't trying to be who I've always been, I would allow myself to become who? Take a breath on that one. Well,
No, really, a round of applause for this. Wow, those are such great prompts because, and it touches on something that I think is so important, and you're able to articulate it with language and question, is the process of radical self inquiry.
I do that
Radical.
a lot.
Really? Yes. Yes. A self, evaluation and asking the hard questions to yourself. And then, honestly answering them is just a really beautiful process. I think all three of those really touch on something that we should ask ourselves regularly.
Hmm.
I think it's important that we regularly have these practices where we're constantly checking in with ourselves and doing that self inquiry and making sure that we're still in alignment with everything that feels good for us, and that the world and the programming hasn't taken over, hasn't overridden your original programming.
Right. Because when
Yeah.
that original programming, or we'll call it the familiar, right? When
Yes.
that
Yeah.
falls apart, it's not the end, but people think it's the end. That's actually the invitation.
Yes, it is. Absolutely. It's the invitation. Oftentimes, before something new comes forward in life, it seems like everything falls apart. And because it has to, in a way,
Right.
because it has to make space for this new thing that's going to come forth. Yeah.
Yeah, it's an invitation to who you're always meant to be, the version of you that's no longer built on survival but truth. Or, like my move, for example, my move, my
Mm,
empty nest season, my career shift. Oh my gosh, the heartbreaks, the losses, the unraveling.
agreed.
They didn't break
Yeah.
me. They broke the version of me that I wasn't meant to carry anymore. And I guess that's where my why not me mindset was born a little bit. It was born here in the
Hmm.
mountains. It
Yes.
is like a space between who I thought I had to be and who I finally allowed myself to become. And I think that's where a lot of people get stuck, is they don't allow themselves to finally become.
Right. Right. Because there's a lot of fear behind that
Oh,
too, because we like
so
to stay
much.
comfortable. Yeah. Yeah. We like to stay comfortable kind of where, the status quo is. But again, the concept is that we always keep growing and evolving, and we need to have the space to do that. And in my book, I talk about the nervous system that built your empire, that built your life, and why did it build it this way? And is it something that you can continue to sustain? um and but like we're touching on here, the very first real steps, and these questions really prompt that, is for you to turn inward and really discover what your own truth is. A lot of us walk around and we think that we know ourselves. Do we know ourselves, or do we just know what people tell us what we are? Oh, you're so kind, you're so giving, you're so dependable, you're so perfect, you're so, all of this. But only you really know what your truth is and where it lies. And we're never taught the process of doing this self inquiry, of sitting down and having these questions asked to us, unless we go seek it out, right? Like with coaches or therapists or whatnot. But I think that this type of process is something we should all learn in school, or something like that, to just never forget who we are. So that way we don't create a life around something we think we're supposed to be.
Well, and I think I did this one exercise with a group of people once, and it was, who am I? And people are like, what? I'm a mom. I'm a teacher. I'm a daughter. Okay, that's great. But who are you? And that was a hard
Exactly.
exercise because a lot of people couldn't identify who they were without naming what they did.
Yes, yes. So that's an interesting process that I go through with my clients pretty often, is as it kind of frame it a little differently, but it's asking them, okay, what brings you joy? And of course, the first answers usually are my mom, my kids, my marriage, my career, my, all of this. No, no, no. But what brings you joy that has nothing to do with the roles in your life?
Hmm. Right.
So if we remove all of the roles, what is this? What brings you joy? And joy is who you are, also, by the way. That's your truth.
Right.
And so that's a tough one for people to sit with. Sometimes we got to sit a little while and let that come to the surface. But to me, it's kind of a disturbing thing that this is something we have to almost excavate out of ourselves, and and wake up the dormant parts of who we've been
Right.
all these years. And many times it's associated with our childhood, and that's why we kind of write it off a lot, because like, oh, I was just a child. But no, also, oh, that's who you really were. And somewhere along the way you forgot.
So, beneath all of that, I mean,
Yeah.
simply, if I say like, who am I? Well, simply, I'm Becky, right? I'm a whole being.
Uh-huh.
I'm growing. I'm healing. I'm learning herself more deeply every day. I'm soft in places I used to hide,
Ah,
strong in places that were once broken,
yes.
unbelievably ready for what's next. That's and
Yes.
I
Beautiful.
I really think like yes, I can also name 100 other things of other things, but I think that we do not listen to our inside. We listen to the outside too much.
Yes. And it's the inside voice that should be the one that's most prominent, and the one that we turn to first and listen to first. But we're never really taught this. We're taught to chase approval from outside of ourselves, when really it needs to come from within. Because once you start having the approval from within, then you are truly in alignment with your pure resonance. And once you start to resonate with who you are, that's how life really begins to take off. That's how the universe begins to magnetize to you all of the right people, opportunities, situations, and experiences. But until we know who that is and really embrace that person and sit with it, we are kind of just floating around out here, bouncing around, hit or miss with approval and validation from everything outside of us.
And embrace the transitions. I
Mhm.
embracing the transitions I think is so powerful. I never in a million years thought I would ever leave Ohio. And
Mm.
I think leaving Ohio was like the hardest but most rewarding transition. When I first decided to do it, I was so excited. I was like, oh yeah, I'm gonna go live in Asheville in the mountains, and then I got here and I was like, holy shit, my kids are in Ohio. I'm here by myself because they were adults
Oh my
now, right? I
goodness.
became an empty nester.
Yeah.
Um,
Yes.
and it was lonely. It was awful. And I didn't know how to cook
Yes.
for just myself. Um,
Ah,
honestly,
oh,
I didn't even know how to go do things by myself. Like
a whole new
it
life,
was just
right?
yeah. So now I call it like I've embraced this life 2.0. I've completely embraced. Doesn't mean I don't miss my kids dearly. I mean, I see them a lot. They come here, I go there. But that was
Yeah.
quite an adjustment after 22 years of having kids under your roof and going to sporting
Yes.
events, being the hockey mom, the track mom, the colleges, the college visits, the not having any money ever because the kids had to have, you know, every penny you made. Um,
Right.
you know, family vacations,
Yeah.
our traditions.
Yeah.
Even putting up the Christmas tree is different for me because, like,
Mm.
I never put it up without my kids not putting their ornaments on the tree. And last year, when my kids were here
Yeah.
for Christmas, I actually sent my oldest home with a bag of all his ornaments. And that was like
Oh.
weird, right? But
Oh,
these are all
yeah.
these are all those transitions. These are all those initiations to that next part of life. And now it's like, okay, here I am. Now I'm ready for life 2.0. Now I'm ready for that special person that I can build life 2.0 with. And
Right.
yes, I still have these kids, and but they're adults now. It's like I
Yes.
now get to invent my own life. This whole new
Yes.
transition. This is my identity shakeup. This is like a one of those shakers, that you put a protein shake in, you shake it. That's what my
Yeah. With the ball.
oh my god,
Yeah.
that's what my head was the ball, like going all over.
Yeah.
But
Knocking all
but
over.
I'm like, who the hell am I? I don't even know who I am anymore. Um,
Yes.
but I'll tell you what, I found it real quick. It has not been
Yes.
easy, and there's still days that aren't easy. There's still nights I'm lonely. There's still days that I call and talk to my kids. I'm like, oh, I wish you were here. I wish we could just have dinner together tonight. And my
Yes.
kids are so great about this because they'll FaceTime me or whatever, and we'll have dinner. Or my best friend back home will FaceTime dinner together, and so it's like,
Hmm.
thank God for technology.
Oh, yeah.
But these are
Yes.
these are these are just these are little ones, but we're talking, of course, about heavier and deeper. But without all of these transitions, without all these different initiations in life, we don't get to
Hmm.
become who we are today. Like, I was able to be okay with this. I was able to have this new becoming in my life because I did the work. I did the identity debris cleanup,
Right.
prior to coming here and allowing such a big change to be impactful in such a positive way. But you have to
Yes.
allow that. You
Yes.
have to invite that and allow that to come into your life in order for it to feel okay. I wasn't going to say the word successful because I
Yeah.
want people to feel okay.
To feel
Then the
okay, to feel
success
well.
can come.
Yeah.
Yes. To
It
feel
does.
freedom,
Yeah.
to feel like you're emerging. You're not failing, you're emerging.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. And we don't have to be so hard on ourselves. And something that I really learned in my practice and working with my clients um, is the theme of death and rebirth. Well, actually, in
Mm,
Sanskrit, it's called samsara, and it's the cycle of birth, death, and rebirth. And we think about this as humans as actual death transitioning out of our life, and into what comes after. But we experience it, we can almost every day or pretty often within our lives within these different themes. And so if we understand the sacredness of something new coming along and then it ending and then something new coming along after that, it all keeps going and moving, so we don't look at these initiations in our life or these big changes as failures. They
mhm,
become something that's empowering when we understand that this is rolling into something new. This is not who you are going to be forever, and this is opening the portal to something that will help you grow and be another season in your life. And so when you look back on these traumas or initiations or transitions, as you were talking about them, we can look back at them with gratitude.
Yeah, and then of course, I'm gonna throw some more tools in here or like check-ins,
Please.
right? So I think
Yes.
it's so important too. So I've got a few of these, and um, I have like I had to do like an identity check-in, right? So I think identity check-in after you go through this whole like debris thing, then it's very important to do identity check-in, and you need to ask yourself questions, and it's okay. Like, what version of me am I still trying to hold together? And like, who
Hmm.
taught me this version? Like, who taught this to me? Like, why do I feel like I have to hold this certain version together? Maybe this isn't who I am. So you have to ask, what part of me needs to be released? Like, I'm going to release it now because now I am going to do an identity check. That's one. And then I have one, number two, the permission slip. Give yourself permission to no longer be that version. Like, it's okay to not always be the same version or the version that was comfortable or the one that silenced their needs or the one that pretends to be okay or the
Hmm.
one who loves from fear instead of worthiness.
Hmm.
Give yourself permission. And but
Hmm.
you have to write this down. Like, I give myself permission to no longer be the version of me who what? I'm giving myself permission to no longer be the version who allows negative energy in my life. You know, you
Right.
have to give yourself that permission. I just,
Yes.
mm, I could go on. And then, of
I
course, I
know.
got to bring in the anchor movement because the anchor has been my thing and I love my
Ah,
anchors now. But the anchor
yes.
moment, this is the grounding tool that you can use anytime you feel lost. Place your hand, and you're going to love this. I do this a
Mhm.
lot. Place your hand on your heart
Heart
and
space.
say,
Yeah. Yes.
I am not who I was.
Mm.
I am not yet who I'm becoming,
Mm.
but I am allowed to be in this in between. You're allowed to be in the in between. Let your nervous
Yes.
system settle into the truth that transition is not failure, it's a
Right.
passage. Mm,
Right. Absolutely. And it can sound easier said than done as we're sitting here talking
yes.
about this, but what does that really look like? And having good tools in place for when this does happen to actually help you. So for me, what was huge for me was the somatic work, right? And yoga practice and therapy. And then also finding my inner voice that was able to self-coach me again because I had lost that. I'd let it go. I abandon it. We talk about abandoning all the time, but
Yes.
it's finding your inner voice again and the one that will guide you with truth and and not letting go of it no matter how many times you cry on the floor or how many times you throw things and break them because you just have so much rage or whatever it is. It's going to be a wrestling back and forth, but just to
Mhm.
always come back to, okay, who am I and what is this and where do I go from here?
And that's where I go to action steps, right? So, in order to go from there, there's things you have to release. Like,
Yes.
maybe you need to send that email you've been avoiding. Maybe you need to start setting a boundary that you've never set. Saying no
Mm-hmm.
to something that drains you. I know I've got to learn to say no to overbooking my schedule, right?
Yes,
Saying yes
same.
to something that scares you, like, you know,
Ah,
signing up for something that pulls you forward or removing
yes.
yourself from a space that no longer holds you or serves you or fills your cup, however you want to put that. And so
Yeah.
everything you just said leads into like the action step. Like, we have to
Yep.
take steps that might scare us, that might be uncomfortable, setting up
Mm-hmm.
a boundary.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And your next
Yes.
chapter isn't created in one big leap. Like, it's built through brave, honest, tiny steps.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. It absolutely is. And I think when a lot of us go through this process, the number one thing we're all afraid of is loss and losing people. And in spirituality, they talk about all the time, practicing non-attachment. Whew,
Mhm.
what a lesson and initiation going through this can be about non-attachment to people, places, and things, because
Mhm.
as you begin to choose yourself and put yourself first, yes, you are going to lose people.
Yeah.
Some of them are going to fall to the wayside, but that's a holy process, because then you kind of weed out those who weren't in alignment with who you truly were, and making space for people who are. And I like to talk to my clients often about the concept of, it doesn't have to be either or, it can be and also. It can be and also.
Mhm.
So it doesn't mean, you have to lose these people and it's terrible, but you can and also bring on people in your life who will be more fulfilling and more in alignment with who you are, because at the end of the day we just need to realize the truth that we're still always going to be okay. and
Right.
and that's just our brain thinking we're circumstances trying to protect us, but we're not cave people anymore that need need constant hypervigilance to protect our reality around us. Our nervous system and our mind and our soul does have the luxury of being able to relax in this life and trust the process.
I think that's the hard one for some people, is trusting the process because
Yes, it
of
is.
how they feel, because it's not a good feeling going through that process.
Right. It can be painful. It can be painful. It can be fucking terrible and
Yeah.
terrifying. Okay,
Yeah.
we'll just be honest about that. It can rip you apart. It will rip you apart, but you
Mhm.
can withstand it and you can pass through the initiation. You are strong enough to do it. And I just hope that books like yours and mine and women like me and others like us, will be placed in the right places for people who need to hear us and hear this information, and just know that they're not alone.
100%. 100%. And before we close tonight, I want to leave our listeners with this. When life breaks apart the identity that you've been carrying, it's not punishment, it's permission.
Mhm.
This initiation, it does not look like confidence at all. It looks like the moment that you admit, I can't be who I used to be anymore. And that's
Yes,
where the next chapter begins. And let me tell you, when you get to that next chapter, it's beautiful, but there's also initiations in that chapter too. So the initiations never go away, they're always there. Um, but
totally.
if you're in that like in between place right now, if you're letting go of old roles, old stories, old versions of yourself, I want you to know this, just like what we've both been saying this whole time, you're not alone, you're not failing. You are becoming, you are growing, you are healing, you are learning. And that's
Yes,
all so sacred, so sacred.
it is.
Mm,
It is. It's our soul in real time in this hard ass 3D reality, coming and learning what we've come here to learn.
yes, for
Yeah,
sure. So, Larry,
yeah.
thank you so much for sharing your heart, your wisdom, and
Of
your journey
course.
tonight as well. Um,
Yes.
your book, The Sacred Undoing, is such a powerful companion for anyone navigating their own identity awakening. And to everybody listening out there, this conversation lives at the heart of both our books, the Why Not Me
Yeah.
concept, The Sacred Undoing. The moment survival shifts into healing and you finally choose that version of yourself that you were always meant to be. So, as you
Yeah.
step back into your life tonight and ask yourself the question that changed everything for me, if not
Mhm.
this version of me, then why not the version I'm finally ready to become? Because this is your rise, this is your rewrite, this is your why not me moment for sure. So
Yep.
I want to thank everyone for being here. Thank you for choosing growth, and thank you for allowing us to be a part of your healing. And I'm
Yes.
sure many of those that are out there listening tonight, don't forget to send your pictures with your wine. That was so beautiful last week.
Oh yes, loved that from that viewer or listener. Thank you so much. And Becky, I just want to thank you for holding this space for me and for everyone listening to come together and get what they need out of this. It's a beautiful, it's a sacred thing that you're doing here, and it's part of the
Thank you.
magic.
Oh,
Yes.
I love it. I just don't have a black hat with a rabbit coming out of it, but it's I'm getting there. I'm almost there
It's
now. I'm just kidding.
yeah, I can feel it though. I can see it and I can feel it. I'm sure everyone else does too. Yeah.
So we will be returning again next Monday at
Yes.
7 p.m. And I'm excited to keep going on this journey that we are doing. And until next time, take a breath, trust the shift, and keep becoming. I want to thank
Yes.
everyone for listening to Real Adult Wisdom. And we will be back in your homes and in your ears next week at this time.
Thank you.
Thank you.